Dry Clay 101. Episode 1. Make your own cold porcelain air dry clay. In this episode, June and I, Zane, the floating head, will be showing you how you can make your own air dry clay with materials and ingredients that most likely you already have. We will be showing you not one, but two ways on how you can make air dry clay. One that is cooked and another that is not cooked. After that, we will compare the two and then tell you each of their good points and bad points. So let's not wait any longer and let's start. Method 1. Cooked air dry clay. In this method, you will need non-stick pan, plastic or silicone mixing tool, cornstarch. I'm using a repacked cornstarch, which is cheaper that could be bought in the market, so I'm not exactly sure if it's 100% pure cornstarch, but I've seen other clays recommend it, so use that instead if you can. White glue, vinegar, baby oil or cooking oil, lotion or conditioner, cling wrap, resealable bag or plastic. The measurements we're using here are half of the most common measurements you can find on other air dry clay tutorials. The original measurements are a little too much for me since I only make miniatures. If you plan on making bigger projects, use the original measurements or even double it up. Step 1. Mix all ingredients on the pan. There's no specific order which ingredients should go first. Mix it well until the mixture is smooth without lumps. Step 2. Cook the mixture. Set your stove on low heat. Continuously mix the clay as you cook it. Make sure that all parts and sides of the clay are being cooked well. When the clay starts sticking to itself and not on the pan, that means that it's starting to set. It will also start to be a little harder to push or flatten the clay onto the pan by this time, but try to do that as much as possible. I take out my clay from the pan once I see that when I flatten it, that part easily gets off the pan. Step 3. Knead the clay. Knead the clay with your hands soon after you take it out of the pan. Be careful though, as it's really hot. If you have a mini fan or something, use that while kneading so it will ease the hotness a little. Put a very small amount of lotion or conditioner on your hands while kneading the clay. I usually knead the clay until all lumps are gone. The lumps are basically the clays that stick to the pan and kind of got cooked more than the rest. Step 4. Store your clay for a few hours. Take a cling wrap. Place the clay and wrap the cling wrap around it. Make sure that all sides are fully covered. Then, for extra security, put it inside a resealable bag or plastic. Storing the clay after you cook it will let it set more. You can start using the clay after 4 to 6 hours. There will be times when the clay will be a little sticky after letting it set. That means you were not able to mix it well while cooking. That's totally fine though, as you can't always cook it perfectly. How to check the clay's consistency. Test 1. It should create a teardrop shape when pulled apart. Pull the clay apart and it should be making a teardrop shape. Test 2. When making a ball, the surface must be smooth. You can also test it by creating a ball. The surface of the ball must be smooth and doesn't have lines or creases. Test 3. Flattened clay should not have any cracks or creases. Lastly, flatten the clay and the edges must be smooth, and there should be no cracking happening. These tests work for both cooked and no-cook air-dry clay. If your clay ended up a little sticky, oh no, what did you do? No, just kidding. It might be a little undercooked. Expose it to air for a few minutes to an hour or something to let it dry a bit. Check it from time to time to see if the consistency is already good enough. If your clay ended up super sticky, you're a failure. No, not really. It might have been undercooked. You can put it back onto the pan and allow it to cook again. This time, do your best to mix the clay properly while it's cooking. Push and flatten the clay onto the pan to let all parts get cooked. But try not to overcook it this time. If your clay ended up rubbery or breaking apart, it might be because your clay is overcooked. To make the clay workable, you can create another mixture of ingredients, but this time, cut the measurements in half or even a quarter, and then mix that with the overcooked clay. However, the mixture could be a little too melty, so if you don't want that, you can mix an undercooked clay to the overcooked clay. And that's basically it. If you have any questions about this method, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try to answer it with the best of my knowledge. Hey, if you're learning something from this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you! Method 2. No-cook air-dry clay. Next, we're going to show you how to make air-dry clay without cooking it. In this method, you will need the same materials and ingredients. Just replace the pan with a bowl or a container where you can mix the ingredients on. For tutorial purposes, I'm just making a very small amount of clay in this method. With that said, I don't rely much on measuring tools, but rather on the ratio of the ingredients. Step 1. Mix all ingredients on a bowl or container. Mix it well until the mixture is smooth without lumps. As for the oil, I added a very small amount of it first because adding too much will make the clay liquidy or melty or something like that. I just estimate how much I add on the clay after mixing it and see how it looks. If your clay is kind of melty, add a bit of cornstarch. Add small amounts of it at a time because adding too much will make your clay fall apart. And then you're gonna have to add your wet ingredients again, and that would more likely be an endless cycle of adding wet and dry ingredients. And then you'll start to go crazy about it. Okay, now in this part, you can see that the clay is less melty, so that's good. However, the thing is, it's still sticking on the container no matter how much I try to take it away with the clay. Basically, you want the clay to stick to itself like with the cooked air dry clay. To stop the clay from sticking onto the container, I'll add another small amount of oil. Step 2. Let your clay set. Leave the clay for a while and check it from time to time. Make sure the consistency is good. Do the same test I mentioned earlier to determine if the consistency of your clay is good enough. Step 3. Store your clay. You can use the clay immediately after it's set, but if you'd like to maybe take a bit of a rest, you can store it the same way the cooked air dry clay is stored with a cling wrap and the resealable plastic or bag. And that's it. You now have your own clay without the hassle of cooking it. Cooked air dry clay versus no cook air dry clay. Now that both are cooked and no cook air dry clays are done, let's compare them. Texture. No cook air dry clay is softer, especially when you pull it apart. The surface or texture isn't as smooth. While the cooked air dry clay is soft, but there's some kind of resistance when pulled apart. The surface is smooth. Color handling. This difference is much more evident when only little color is applied to the clay or mixed to the clay. No cook air dry clay handles color much better. Color applied looks more saturated. Cooked air dry clay handles the color alright but seems lighter. So let me do a quick color test here to show you the difference I'm talking about. I use both acrylic paint and poster paint in coloring my clays, so I'm going to show you both as well. Now, look at how darker the color of the no-cook air-dry clay compared to the cooked air-dry clay. Poster paint is also more saturated than acrylic paint. And now if I do this, look at what happens. Let's talk about workable time. No-cook air-dry clay's surface dries faster than cooked clay, and it dries even faster when mixed with color. It allows less working time and has a higher chance of cracking. Cooked air-dry clay, on the other hand, allows more working time. However, it also dries fast when mixed with color. Sculpting. Okay, now I'll be sculpting a quick cat silhouette. Sorry I wasn't able to record the sculpting process. My camera's battery is already too low. But anyway, we'll see how both clays do. It's going to be pretty rough looking since I'm not going to smoothen them out with water or anything, so that we can definitely see if anything will crack or what. Now let's see what happened. These are fully cured, by the way. Take note, even though your sculpt is already fully cured, you can still smooth it out with water. That's one of the advantages with air-dry clay. However, the downside is that it's not waterproof, so you definitely need to apply varnish or coating on it to make it waterproof. For the no-cook air-dry clay, the shape is less defined compared to the cooked air-dry clay. You can see that the connections on the ears here have creases because the clay already started to dry, and it's hard to really shape it out. You can also see creases on other areas, but the sphere shape of the head is pretty smooth. It's hard as rock when it dries, so it's not that easy to break. It doesn't crack even if you smash it on the surface or something. As for the cooked air-dry clay, the overall silhouette looks much defined than the no-cook one. The connections on the ears are also kind of smooth, but it definitely needs to be polished. Same as the no-cook air-dry clay, it also dries hard as rock. Drying or curing time. No-cook air-dry clay can cure within the same day, up to a day or two, depending on how big the sculpt is. It is quite brittle while drying, so it may break if not handled well. Cooked air-dry clay can cure after a day, up to 3 to 4 days depending on how big the sculpt is. On the first days that the clay is curing, the clay will be flexible, meaning it can be slightly bended or squished. However, the form will stay the same even though you bend it. Still, be careful not to bend it too much because it can still break. Additional tips. If you plan on using wires or armature in your sculpts, make sure to use stainless wire because you don't want it to rust inside your clay. I'm not really sure what will happen, but it's probably going to affect how your clay will cure and how strong your sculpt is, or I don't know. But yeah, it's best to just make sure. This also applies for metal findings if you're making accessories. You may use ordinary metal findings, but you have to make sure the sculpt is completely dry or cured before attaching the metal finding. Quick summary. You may use the no-cook method if you're only making simple shapes, which doesn't require detailed textures. For more complicated sculpts, use the cook method. In general though, cooked air-dry clay is much preferable. And that's all for this episode. I will be talking more about air-dry clay in another episode in this series, For the next episode, I will be showing you how to color your clays, and I will also be testing out various color mediums and see what they look like when used with clay. If there's anything I wasn't able to mention, or if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. You can also message me in any of my socials if you like. If you want to see more of this series, I hope you subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when the next video is up. Like this video if you learned something, and follow me on my socials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also support me and help fund my future projects through Ko-fi and Patreon. All the links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching until here. Hope to see you in the next video. Stay crafty. Till the next one. Bye!